Well, I think my role in the Humane Society has been one that we started this contract in August 1st. And it was started because the Humane Society lost their insurance. For whatever reason, they probably had some lawsuits and they lost their insurance, which meant they could no longer be the dog catcher in Grand Island. And so they lost their contract with the city when they lost their insurance. And it was something that they had did, and so it's had nothing to do with the city. But once we did this emergency contract with them for kenneling, just for kenneling. And so all they're doing is providing a kennel for 3 days. While the city has animal control responsibility, we do not have any statutory authority to be the Humane Society. So we need a very vibrant and active Humane Society separate from the city. And on the city side, we need to have the police department has went in and become the animal control officers, and we've done all of those things. And so I'm grateful that we did this quick contract to do the kenneling out there, but it's a sweetheart deal. The contract pays them $25,000 a month just to have priority intake. So when a police officer shows up to check in an animal that they have brought out there for impound, $25,000 a month just to have the priority. Then we pay $45 a day for up to the 3 days. So for example, I brought it up at the last meeting, the Lazy V, they went out there, had 6 cats, brought them out there, and the taxpayers were billed $945 for housing these 6 cats for 3 days, and 4 of them died. But our code is not meant to take all animals at large and impound them. That's not what the code has ever been intended for. So what our code talks about is animal control. We want to make sure that the public is safe from any animal that could harm, particularly children or anybody that's vulnerable. So we have animal control responsibility for sure. The contract with the Humane Society only deals with domestic animals. So first of all, we're not talking about possums or raccoons or anything that's not domestic. We're only talking about dogs and cats that are domestic animals. But now we're taking everything out there, which is creating a huge financial cost to the city just to do kenneling. Other cities do it very differently, and our city code, it follows the state law. The choice to impound is a police officer or an ACO's decision. If he thinks it's a harm or could harm anyone in the community, he should have it impounded. But if it's 6 kittens at the Lazy V, there's no risk, for that. When we pick up chickens or when we pick up rabbits, we have picked up things, and we're paying $135. The taxpayers are paying just to have a 3-night stay. And then at the end of that, they're supposed to be, from the city perspective, euthanized, or if the Humane Society wants to continue to adopt them out or have their programs, that's their dollar, that's their role, that's their mission in life, and we want them to be successful. Joyce and I used to take pictures. We used to volunteer for the Humane Society, and when they had the light show down in Stolly Park, we took pictures. I took pictures of the kids with Santa Claus for the Humane Society. So we have been big supporters historically of the Humane Society. So we're not against the Humane Society, but it's not a city responsibility. My responsibility as a taxpayer is to make sure that we have people that do services that we need to have done and that we do it the correct way. And so this contract was for 38 months, much longer on a no-bid contract than any no-bid contract should go. And I think it's a very expensive deal for a city just to have somebody kennel them. We have an average of 6 per day that we kennel, and that average is overstated. We're not really there yet. And so it's less than that. And when I talk to owners of kennels, they all would love to have a part of the city contract, but they're not wanting to step on the toes of the Humane Society. And so now that the Humane Society has told the city that they want to terminate the contract, I'm hopeful that we go back out, get actual bids, and then actually provide services from somebody who wants to provide it at a fee that they're willing to provide it for, and not have all of these challenges. But in the last meeting, the invoice that came from the Humane Society was for $19,125. We ended up paying $4,500 plus a credit that we had with them. That's a big difference. That was more than double billed what was appropriate according to our legal staff. And so we want to have a contract that everybody agrees to. And this all comes down to the president of the Humane Society, Greg Geist, told us in that one meeting, it took him 6 weeks to sign the contract after the mayor and council approved it on August 19th. The 6 weeks, he said, the reason it took him 6 weeks to sign it is because he didn't think that they were getting paid for everything that they wanted to get paid for. And he was correct. And so somewhere he was actually correct, and he didn't want to sign the contract. So we've always been in that position where he didn't think it was a good contract. And right now, we need to pay what we owe because we want to be fair to anybody that's a partner, but we only want to pay what the contract says. Even if it's a sweetheart deal, they need to be paid what the contract says, and not a penny more. And I don't want any vendor to be billing us for more than what the city owes. That's a responsibility on everybody, including in the staff, from accounts payable to the department directors. They have to have knowledge of these contracts and what they're saying. And right now, we haven't had that conversation as a staff, as a council, as to how do we get to the right, where we build the right amount of money. And we keep avoiding the issue, and that's obviously resulted in a termination. But we could have addressed it 6 months ago when this whole thing started. Well, I can only imagine the Humane Society is struggling to go from a $600,000 a year contract that they lost because they lost their insurance. They have a financial model to make things work too. They're going to have financial struggles without the city, and I just don't want to continue to. We're not a charity organization. We want vendors who want to provide what the city needs, and we want the city to actually exercise prudence when we're exercising these city codes. If we have animals running at large, we have to make that determination as do they need to be impounded or not. And it is not everyone needs to be impounded. Somebody's little dog, but the Humane Society is wonderful with the chipping, with the education. All of those things are wonderful Humane Society responsibilities, not city responsibility. The other day, a friend of mine had a dog following him. He took the dog out to the Humane Society. They read the chip, they found the owner. It all happened in a matter of, I'll say, less than an hour. The city of Grand Island should not have to pay $45 for one night stay on something like that. It's just the way it should work in the community. If some citizen brings out an animal and says, this one was following me around, and they read the chip, they're great for that. And so we really want them to be successful, but the city cannot continue to pay them for things that they can no longer do. I think kenneling of a domestic animal is pretty simple. You can go a couple of places in Grand Island and do that. And the fee is, when I last checked, it was anywhere from $20 to $30 a day to kennel a dog or an animal, a cat, a domestic. And that's all we're talking about here. So to pay a $25,000 a month flat fee plus, $35 or $45 a day for $135 for a 3-day stay, it's too much. It's too much for the taxpayer. I think it needs to be fair. I think it needs to be fair for the kennel. I think it needs to be fair for the city, and I think it needs to be fair for the taxpayers. I'm elected by taxpayers, and I'm here watching their dollars. I'm not trying to be unfair to anybody, but we want a contract that everybody wants to be agreeable to, and we don't want to have competition in this contract and try to feed money into the Humane Society just by taking every animal out there. So I think there's a proper way of doing it. I think that the Humane Society has a big challenge. How do you bridge a $600,000 funding gap when you lose your insurance? And that's their challenge, and hopefully they'll go out and then the community will support them.